感じ純粋な力を混沌の旋律をされクズめ。
Hey everyone, this is Nitro. I haven't updated my exclusive tier list since August of 2020, and since it's now January of 2021, there's been 10 new exclusives that have been released. In this video, I'll cover 12 exclusives, so I'm going to go into the February release, and hopefully next month I'll cover the other exclusives that we know are coming up, because we actually know the exclusives all the way till June of 2021 due to the Chinese server. In any case, let's cover the retroactive exclusives first, and then get into the 4 new ones that I'll cover in this video, and maybe next month I'll update all the way to June or July so that I'm up to date on the exclusives. So first, let's talk about Betty's exclusive, which has the following effect. It's a helmet where it boosts fixed damage the lower Betty's hit points is, and it's up to a 30% increase in the fixed damage dealt. You can compare it to, let's say, Vargas, for example, right? Vargas gets more damage reduction, the lower his hit points, stuff like that. So it's not a bad helmet, especially since there aren't really that great helmets for infantry characters in general. So overall, I would say maybe it's an optional nice to have if you use Betty, but not exactly required. It's hard to say. I mean, you can say it's PvP oriented because after all, Betty is a PvP oriented hero. But ultimately, I don't consider it really a must-have item. So hard to say where it goes. Maybe I'll put it under PvP oriented one. Next is Sophia's Lost Light Armor. So this one has the following effect. When you use skills on allies, it gives allies the following buff. Attack and int is increased by 15%, and magic defense is increased by 20%, and this buff lasts 2 turns. Given that Sophia's talent grants allies a 30% defense increase, you can say it's kind of similar to providing your characters a faction buff for when they don't have one, right? And it applies when you use, let's say, Mass Heal, which you can use every other turn, or Rewind. So it's kind of like a 2-turn faction buff, which makes it a really, really nice piece of gear to have. If you're using Sophia, I would say it's pretty much a must-have for her. Next is batch number 19, which was Narm and Virash. Narm gets a helmet which has the effect of reducing her talent's cooldown by 1. Her talent effect basically reduces the enemy's mobility for any target she attacks, which makes it a really, really weird item to have. Frankly speaking, Narm should not be targeting, like, let's say, tanks to reduce their mobility. So I actually would put this under garbage tier, because Narm being an archer or flyer means that she can always use a King's Crown instead of this exclusive. So providing 20% increased damage to an ally is probably better than reducing the enemy's mobility by 3. The one exception may be a challenge battle where reducing an enemy's mobility by 3 can keep them permanently locked down and unable to do anything. Next up is Virash's Armor. So Virash's Armor effect is that when the hero takes fatal damage and does not die, the hero will gain 1 random buff. So given his whole mechanics is he dies and revives, he can get multiple buffs from this armor of his. Is it worth it? Honestly, I don't know. I frankly do not use Virash in the first place, so it's really hard for me to say about whether this one is worth it or not. Overall, I mean, if you use Virash, getting additional buffs is always nice, so maybe put it under optional nice to have. I truly don't know about this one. Maybe someone can inform me. Or maybe I'll just leave it here for now, because I actually have no clue. Like, I just... So let's move on. Next then is Brenda's Armor, Lunar Memories. So it has the effect of when an act again effect is triggered, so Brenda gets to act again after 3 combat occurrences. So after 3 combat, she gets to act again, and when that act again occurs, she can dispel 2 debuffs from herself, and she gets a buff where she deals 10% increased damage and takes 10% reduced damage. Lasts 1 turn, that buff. Overall, I would say it's another optional nice to have item. Not necessarily required, but getting additional stats when you do trigger act again is always nice. It's not necessarily required because just frankly, there's so many good armors for, like, let's say Lancer and for heavy armor types, right? You have the Bloodline Magic Armor, you have the Aeolus Armor that can prevent you from dying. This one can increase your damage dealt, so it is an optional nice to have one. I'll probably put it under PvE oriented, because increased damage in PvE can be very, very good, especially for things like Ancient Beckoning, where damage is king. Right? But ultimately, it is very much an optional nice to have item, not required at all. Okay. Following that is the Oliver exclusive. So by Oliver, I mean the bratty prince of Caconsis, not the collaboration hero, Olivier. Okay. So Oliver's exclusive is a helmet where after you score a critical hit on the enemy, you can inflict 1 debuff on them and steal 1 buff from the target. Once again, this one is very clearly PvP oriented, right? I mean, inherently Oliver is kind of like a PvP hero. At the same time, I wouldn't consider Oliver a top tier PvP hero, so this one is a little bit awkward. Like, I faced Oliver's before. He has not been able to assassinate most things. That's why I say, on one hand, this is PvP oriented. On the other hand, since Oliver inherently isn't the top tier PvP hero, whether you actually want this item is truly hard to say. Maybe I'll put it under not worth 150 points, because ultimately you don't want to use Oliver. Right? That's kind of what I mean. Like, sometimes you have to balance this out where it's about the hero utility versus the equipment usability. Moving on. Next up is Akaya's exclusive. And Akaya's exclusive is quite unique. Right? It has the effect of, after taking action, you summon 1 wolf soul adjacent to you. And the wolf soul will have 75% of Akaya's current stats. And of course, you can only have 1 wolf soul at any time, and this effect can only occur once per battle. What this does is it opens additional options for using Akaya. For example, what it means is Akaya can use her 1-point skill to act again. It'll summon a wolf soul, and right again, you can use that wolf soul to, let's say, trigger her mobility skill, which grants her allies +2 mobility and +30% attack or int. Right? And then when you trigger that, it'll re-summon another wolf soul, so that the following turn you can use an act again skill. Like, you can move the wolf soul forward, and then you can the following turn you can have Akaya use her act again skill to teleport a character forward, and they can act again. So it opens up a lot more options for using Akaya. I would say it's a must-have if you use Akaya. Long story short, right? Most people have been using Sonya's exclusive for Akaya at this time. Now, I would say if you use Akaya for any kind of content, it's a must-have for her. Following that is Vargas' exclusive armor, which is called Great Dragon's Glory. Great Dragon's Glory has the effect of making it so that if Vargas has the power stab buff on him, he will counterattack against range attacks at 2 range. So this now makes Vargas a character who counters attacks at both 1 range and 2 range. Of course, he still doesn't counterattack against ranges longer than that, like 3 range attackers, like characters with Allah's Bow and so on. But 3 range attackers are pretty darn rare, frankly speaking. And having that 2 range counterattack is really, really useful. So for Vargas, this exclusive is very much a must-have for him as well. If you use Vargas, you must have it. It's really that simple. So at this point, we're now caught up on the exclusive items. So let's move on to talk about the upcoming exclusives. The first 2 are ones that come this very week, in fact, which is Bozel's exclusive and Chris's exclusive. So Bozel's exclusive has the effect of dealing damage to enemies. Inflicting one additional debuff on enemies whenever you deal damage to them. Must have for Bozel. Quite simple, right? Bozel already applies a crazy number of debuffs via his skills and then via his talent. Adding yet another extra debuff to Bozel is amazing. So must have if you use Bozel. Actually, it's kind of funny. That makes it 4 new must-have pieces of equipment for heroes. But moving on. The next one is Chris's exclusive. And Chris's exclusive has the effect of, after taking action, if damage was dealt this turn, then this talent will grant 1 extra buff to each target. And after you defeat a demon character, you may act again. The cooldown on this act again effect is 2 turns. So since Chris, in my opinion, is inherently PvE oriented, I think this continues to fall under the PvE oriented category. I have seen Chris's being used for PvP. Right? In fact, I got beaten by a fellow strategist who had Chris in his party. So to be fair, it can be said to be kind of both. Like, maybe I'll put it under must-have as well. If you use Chris, you'll want this, right? Because anytime she does damage, instead of granting just 1 buff to allies, she'll grant 2. And then if she attacks and kills a demon target, she gets to act again. It's just great effects for her. Is a King's Crown better than this helmet? That is the question, right? Providing an ally a guaranteed 20% stat increase versus providing allies an additional random buff. That part is hard to say. So in some ways, this one is kind of debatable, whether you want it over a King's Crown. So it's kind of vague. It can be a must-have, or it can be an optional nice-to-have, or it can be PvE oriented. I'm going to actually, in hindsight, I'm going to place it under PvE oriented because I think King's Crown is a better option overall for PvP. And for PvE, where you actually do face a bunch of demon enemies, for example, it becomes a very, very good item to have on Chris. And then we move into the upcoming month of February, the exclusives released then. So the 2 exclusives that are coming up for February is Ilucia's exclusive and Maiya's exclusive. So Ilucia's exclusive has the effect of, before you're attacked in battle, you gain Tidal Surge. Okay? And this Tidal Surge effect lasts as 1 turn. In addition to that, when you're in water, you will take attack for all allies within 1 ring. So quite a useful effect. What it means is basically, frankly speaking, it's a must-have if you use Ilucia, right? Because being given Tidal Surge is huge for her, and also it means whenever you have Tidal Surge effect on you already, you guard allies within 1 ring of you, regardless. Okay? So just a great exclusive for a tank. Given that previously she only guarded against physical strikes, this now allows her to guard against magical strikes for characters within 1 ring, which is a great boost to her utility. As for Maiya, Maiya's exclusive is that her movement type is now considered flying, and in addition to that, the AoE skills from Maiya will now clear terrain effects. And finally, whenever she ends her action, she'll dispel 1 debuff from allies within 2 spaces. Another must-have exclusive. If you use Maiya, you're going to bring this one. It's just that good. So there's no reason not to bring this exclusive because it just provides so many buffs to her. The fact that she can clear terrain effects, the fact that she will always dispel debuffs from allies, just 2 amazing effects. And it's really, really good. It provides 10% intelligence increase, which is the maximum amount of int increase that any weapon can provide. So that is it for these new exclusives. Now, a few final points I want to mention about the existing ones is that, first of all, Cherie's exclusive, which I put at garbage tier, interestingly enough, it actually has use for Magic Tower Conquest. Right? By having it on your Cherie, it basically means that she can revive after attacking or whatever, which is always useful. I still think it's garbage tier because if you have a last right, that's probably better for keeping your Cherie alive. But in the case of Magic Tower Conquest, your Cherie may very well be damaged before combat begins. And the fact that she can revive from combat can be great, right? Just it forces the enemy has to waste an attack to finish off your Cherie. So I just wanted to mention that. I would still say it's garbage tier, but it's worth mentioning that it surprisingly has a use in a situation like Magic Tower Conquest. The next item I want to mention is Shelfaniel's exclusive is probably now moved out of the not worth 150 points section to PvP oriented again. And that's because Shelfaniel is going to unlock her 3C skill soon. Okay. I believe she gets her 3C in February. So with her getting her 3C in February, which is another self-targeting AoE, like having Sanction, it just basically means that if you're going to use her in PvP, you should have her exclusive on her. So that's why it gets moved in the PvP-oriented category. To be fair, it can be hard to say about this one because, after all, Tennyo's Headdress exists. And this is one of the situations where you have to wonder whether this exclusive is better than the Tennyo's Headdress. But so maybe I would put, you can say it's PvP oriented, you can say it's an optional nice to have. Very hard to say which category this one should go into as well. A lot of these are kind of like they could fall into several categories. That's what I've been noticing. So I moved that one up. Since she has use again, it gets placed over there. All right. And that, I think, covers any adjustments I want to make at this time. So thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you found this video useful to you. And on that note, Nitro out.